Ladies and gentlemen, StarBucks stock has plummeted. It is now trading for only about $73. A few weeks ago, on the Cashflow Kings Live YouTube channel, I had told some of my fellow finance YouTubers that I would be interested in Starbucks if it fell to below $75. And I have, in fact, purchased one share today at $74.99, thus keeping my word on that promise. Now, at the time, I took a lot of criticism for even suggesting that the stock could realistically fall this low. First point I would make is if Meta can drop below $90, then it's safe to assume that any business, regardless of if they're a high quality business, if they have a moat, if millions or billions of people use their product or service, any stock can temporarily experience a rapid decline in share price, whether rational or not. And also, it's important to realize that no company that isn't doing something suspicious will ever, forever, in perpetuity, always crush the quarterly earnings every single quarter for the rest of time. And if a stock is priced as though they will crush every earnings for the rest of time and then they don't, well, the market tends to react fearfully to that. In some cases, an overreaction that creates an opportunity. I'll be watching Starbucks a lot more closely now. I have my one share. I guess it sort of functions as a tracker share. But I'll tell you what I think about sort of the general condition and valuation of Starbucks. Now, as you can see, Starbucks generally has revenue that's trending upwards, although temporary pullbacks, do happen occasionally. So the current situation where they didn't crush this quarter isn't necessarily outside the ordinary. Now, if I were an existing shareholder, I really doubt that I would have sold based on, again, a single quarter that hasn't really gone their way, as the most recent one that they just reported. I think it's important to recognize that stumbles along the way are kind of an ordinary and expected thing. I also really respect how well Starbucks keeps their gross margins stable, in spite of the fact I would imagine coffee beans to be a little bit more volatile in their price. So kudos to them for this. It's probably one of the stronger points of the business. The free cash flow doesn't seem like it's quite as consistent, but this makes sense, I think, in the context of the fact that they do open a lot of new stores still, especially internationally, and there is a cost associated with that. So especially if, they're, putting that on their CapEx and they do a lot of it within certain timeframes, it could hit certain quarters especially hard to where it looks like, the cash flow goes a little bit negative. But I think as long as that results in more sales afterwards, then of course that's growing the business. The business is also priced, I think, for a combination of quality and growth. Now, this roughly 20 price to earnings ratio is one of the lower ones it's had in the last few years. And if you take out the outlier during the pandemic, it still has been over 20 the whole time, and oftentimes in the high 20s to low 30s. And that kind of multiple, in my view, usually indicates a lot of confidence from the market that you're going to get good results on your quarterly earnings, a healthy amount of growth, and you're going to maintain your market share and your wide economic moat. And generally, they're pricing it for pretty low risk as well. I also 100% do not blame anybody that's been buying it in the 90s or the 80s over these last weeks and months, because analysts have been telling you this thing's worth 100 plus all day, every day. They've been shouting that from the rooftops for the most part. Yeah, there's maybe a couple that, have that $80 price target. For the most part, they're 100 plus, with some of the high ones in the stratosphere at 150. So basically, I don't blame anybody for agreeing with the analysts on this and taking that to heart, especially with how popular Starbucks is on social media. Everybody wants that Starbucks cup in the frame on the Instagram or the TikTok or whatever. But at the end of the day, no business knocks it out of the park every quarter forever. And you've also been hearing this fabulous growth story of double-digit growth of earnings over the next several years. And this could still come true. I mean, what we're talking about here is a bad quarter. And, maybe the guidance isn't amazing either. But just as quickly as they have a bad quarter, they could have a, grand slam of a quarter, in the next quarter or two or three. You never know. So I guess it's just, when it comes to my own valuations, I don't want to assume knocking it out of the park. I personally find there's a little bit more safety in assuming that there will be stumbles along the way. And while it does mean that I may, succumb to getting the occasional cigar butt or getting hurt by the occasional falling knife, at least I'll buy at a price that makes sense to me, even if there's some stumbles along the way. I also want to point out that the assumptions that get us to a $75 fair value in a DCF calculator are actually extremely generous. I'm assuming that they'll hit their earnings per share target of $4.13 in 2024, which with this most recent quarter, maybe they won't. I'm only doing a 10% discount rate, which usually I would go steeper, but hey, it's a high quality business with a moat, so we'll stick with 10%. I'm not deducting them at all for tangible book value because I think their brand value probably outweighs anything like that. And I'm giving them credit for 10% growth for a decade, slowing down to 6% at the terminal stage, which means, pretty much a lot of growth. 10% for 10 years is a lot of growth. Literally, any stumbles along the way can make that extremely hard to achieve, which is a big reason why ideally I'd like my basis to be lower than this. But that's just my opinion here. Let me know in the comments what you think about Starbucks. Make sure you remember to like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel for more, join the Discord, link is in the description. We discuss stocks just like Starbucks every single day in the Discord. Also, make sure you catch me every Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern, Cashflow Kings Live. If you're interested in supporting the channel directly, consider becoming a member. It really helps me keep providing content like this going forward. Take it easy, everyone.